The morning sun rose over New Horizon, casting long shadows across the metal and glass structures of the colony. Noah Harrison stepped out of his quarters and breathed in the artificial air pumped through the habitat dome. It smelled clean almost, too clean, lacking the natural sense of Earth he still missed even after 3 years on this distant world. Noah worked as a botanist helping develop crops that could eventually grow in the partially terraformed soil outside the protective domes. His hands were often stained with soil and plant nutrients, a fact that made him stand out among the tech specialists and administrators who made up most of the colony population. The commissary was busy as always during the morning meal cycle. Workers from all departments gathered to fuel up before their shifts began. Noah grabbed his tray of synthesized eggs and protein substitute bacon, along with a cup of what passed for coffee in this place. He scanned the room for somewhere to sit when his eyes fell upon her again. She sat alone at the corner table just as she had every day since arriving 2 months ago. Her skin was a soft violet hue that seemed to shimmer under the artificial lights. Her ears extended into delicate points and her eyes were unlike any human eyes Noah had ever seen. Large and almond-shaped with irises that shifted between silver and pale blue depending on the light. No one ever sat with her. No one even looked at her directly. If they could help it, on her shoulder perched what the colonists had taken to calling her pet, though Noah suspected the relationship was far more complex than that. The creature resembled a small dragon from human mythology, with iridescent scales in emerald and sapphire. Its wings were folded tightly against its serpentine body, and its intelligent eyes seemed to track every movement in the room. Noah had heard the whispers about Lyra, the Sylvani representative, supposedly here as part of a cultural exchange program. The exchange seemed decidedly one-sided, as no humans had been sent to the Sylvani homeworld in return, at least none that the general colony population knew about. He had watched as people avoided her table, as they avoided her gaze in corridors as they fell, silent when she entered rooms. The colony administrator spoke of diplomatic relations and interspecies cooperation, but their actions belied their words. The isolation they imposed on her seemed cruel to Noah. Today, something shifted in him. Maybe it was the way her shoulders slumped slightly as another colonist deliberately chose to stand rather than take the empty seat at her table. Maybe it was the small dragon creature gently nuzzling her cheek as if offering comfort. Or maybe Noah was simply tired of the unspoken xenophobia that ran through the colony like a virus. Noah changed direction and walked straight to her table. The conversations around him faltered as people noticed his trajectory. Some stared openly, others nudged their companions and whispered behind their hands. Noah ignored them all. He stopped at the empty chair across from Lyra and cleared his throat. She looked up, her unusual eyes widening slightly in surprise. The dragon creature on her shoulder extended its neck and tilted its head, regarding Noah with an unnerving intelligence. "May I join you?" Noah asked, keeping his voice casual, as if this was the most normal thing in the world, as if he wasn't breaking the unspoken rule that had governed the colony for months. The silence in the commissary was absolute. Even the kitchen staff had paused to watch this unprecedented interaction. Noah became acutely aware of how many eyes were on him, but he kept his attention fixed on Lyra. For a moment she seemed frozen, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded once, a small, graceful movement. Noah sat down and placed his tray on the table. The dragon creature made a soft, trilling sound that might have been curiosity or warning. Noah couldn't tell. "I don't think we have been properly introduced," Noah said, offering a smile. "I am Noah Harrison. I work in agricultural development. My name is Lyra." Her voice was melodious with an accent that made common words sound exotic. "I serve as cultural attaché from the Sylvani Cooperative." The dragon chirped and Lyra smiled for the first time. "This is Ember," she added. My companion Noah nodded to the creature as if greeting another person rather than a pet. Ember blinked slowly in response. Around them, the commissary gradually returned to its normal volume level. Though Noah noticed many people still casting glances in their direction, "The food here must be very different from what you are accustomed to," Noah commented, Noticing her tray contained only synthesized fruits and a clear liquid, Lyra tilted her head, considering. We have similar nutrient requirements to humans, but our preparation methods differ greatly, she replied. Our bodies process raw materials more efficiently. The diplomatic brief indicated, your species requires cooking and extensive processing to extract nutrition. This was the longest response Noah had heard from her since her arrival. It struck him as odd that no one had bothered to have even this basic conversation with her before. The botanical labs are working on growing actual fruits and vegetables, Noah said. We have had some success with modified strawberries and greens. Would you like to see them sometime? Ember perked up at this, making a series of chirping sounds that almost resembled speech. Lyra listened, then her lips curved into another smile. Ember enjoys growing things, she translated, though Noah suspected there was more to the communication than she revealed. We would be interested in visiting your work area, Noah nodded, feeling oddly pleased. He was about to respond when he became aware of someone approaching their table. He looked up to see Valerie Holt, the colony administrator, standing beside them. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Noah could sense her disapproval. Harrison, she said, her voice clipped. I need to speak with you when you finish your meal. Valerie did not acknowledge Lyra at all, though she cast a wary glance at Ember, who had gone very still. His emerald eyes fixed on the administrator. Yes, Administrator, Noah replied, keeping his tone respectful, but not apologetic. Valerie lingered for a moment longer than necessary, before walking away, her back stiff. Noah watched her go, then turned back to Lyra, whose face had returned to its usual composed mask. Do not worry about me, she said quietly. I am accustomed to such reactions. Something in her tone made Noah want to apologize for his entire species. It isn't right, he said, lowering his voice, though he suspected the surrounding tables could still hear him. People are just afraid of what they don't understand, what they have been told not to understand. Lyra corrected softly. Her silver blue eyes held knowledge that seemed far beyond the cultural attaché role she claimed Ember made. A sound like a sigh and curled his tail more tightly around her neck. Noah wanted to ask what she meant, but was interrupted by the bell signaling the end of morning meal. The commissary burst into activity as colonists rose to report to their stations. Noah reluctantly stood as well. I meant what I said about showing you the labs, he told her. Would tomorrow during free period work? Lyra stood, her movements graceful and fluid in a way that marked her as definitely not human. Ember repositioned himself, on her shoulder, balancing perfectly despite her movement. Tomorrow would be acceptable, she agreed, and Noah thought he detected a note of surprise in her musical voice. Free period at 1500 hours. Noah nodded and picked up his tray. He could feel eyes following him as he walked away, and when he glanced back he saw Lyra watching him, her expression thoughtful. He also noticed something he had missed before: small, nearly invisible devices embedded in the commissary ceiling. They looked like standard surveillance equipment, but something about their placement seemed off. As Noah left the commissary, he was unaware that his brief conversation was already being transmitted across vast, interstellar distances. His simple act of kindness had been observed not just by the colony but by audiences he could not imagine, audiences whose judgment would determine fates far beyond his understanding. Noah stood in Administrator Valerie Holt's office, his hands clasped behind his back. The large viewport behind her desk showed the ongoing terraforming process outside the dome. Massive machines converting the alien landscape into something that might eventually support human life. I notice you were speaking with the Silvani representative today, Valerie said, her voice carefully neutral, though her eyes were hard. Yes, Noah replied simply. You should understand that our relationship with the Silvani cooperative is complicated. Valerie leaned forward, her fingers steepled. We have strict protocols about information sharing. Noah frowned. I was just being friendly. She eats alone every day. Valerie sighed as if dealing with a particularly slow child. The Silvani do not think like us. They do not feel like us. Their presence here is political, not social. That creature with her is not a pet, as you might assume, but something else entirely. Something our scientists don't fully understand, but Noah began. The administrator cut him off with a sharp gesture. We advise minimal contact beyond official functions. The cultural exchange program has specific parameters. I suggest you focus on your work in the botanical labs. The colony needs your expertise there, not in amateur diplomacy. Noah left the administration building feeling unsettled. The warning had been clear, but oddly lacking in specific reasons. He wondered what exactly the colony leadership feared from interaction with Lyra. The next day at the labs, Noah found himself watching the clock as 1500 hours approached. He had prepared a small tour showing the most successful plant specimens they had developed. He wasn't sure why it mattered so much that Lyra be impressed. At exactly 1500, Lyra arrived at the laboratory entrance, Ember perched as always on her shoulder. The dragon creature seemed larger today, its wingspan nearly doubling what Noah had observed in the commissary. Noah wondered if it was his imagination or if the creature actually grew. Welcome to agricultural development. Noah greeted her, aware of his colleagues staring. Some quickly found reasons to be elsewhere. Lyra inclined her head in greeting. The air here smells alive, she commented. It reminds me of the growing chambers on our vessels. Noah guided her through the laboratory, explaining their work on adapting earth plants to the local soil composition. When they reached the experimental strawberry beds, Ember chirped excitedly and fluttered from Lyra's shoulder, hovering above the plants. He senses the life energy, Lyra explained, watching her companion with obvious affection. Our species has always been connected to growing things despite our technological advancements. Of the remaining lab technicians approached cautiously. Is that thing safe around the plants? She asked, eyeing Ember with suspicion. Before Noah could answer, Lyra made a soft, trilling sound. Ember immediately returned to her shoulder. His presence will not harm your specimens, she said. Her tone remained even, but Noah sensed her withdrawal. I think these new varieties might be ready for field testing next month. Noah continued, trying to ease the tension. He gestured toward a sealed chamber where seedlings grew under specialized lights. This section contains our most promising hybrids as they moved through the laboratory. Noah found himself sharing more than just scientific data. He told Lyra about his childhood in the Midwestern agricultural zone on Earth, about his grandmother, who had taught him to love growing things, about his dreams of seeing alien worlds, which had led him to join the colonial program. In turn, Lyra shared carefully measured stories of her homeworld, a place of crystal, spires, and vast forests where her people lived in harmony with the environment. She spoke of millennia of peace and advancement, though Noah noticed she avoided specifics about Sylvani technology or social structure. They ended the tour at a small observation deck overlooking an experimental outdoor plot. Outside the dome, native plants had been integrated with Earth species in an attempt to create a sustainable ecosystem. Your people show remarkable adaptability, Lyra commented, watching the swaying vegetation. It is a quality we have observed in many of your colonies. You make it sound like you've been watching us for some time. Noah replied. Lyra turned to him, her silver blue eyes unreadable. The universe is vast, but life finds its patterns. Her cryptic response hung between them. Over the following weeks, Noah and Lyra fell into a routine meeting during free periods to walk the colony or share meals. Noah introduced her to human music and art, while Lyra taught him words in the melodic Sylvani language. Ember grew more comfortable around Noah, occasionally leaving Lyra's shoulder to perch on his when they were alone. Noah noticed the surveillance devices everywhere, now small, unobtrusive tech that seemed to focus whenever Lyra was present. He also noticed the increasingly concerned looks from colony leadership. The whispers about him had changed from curiosity to suspicion. Deep beneath the colony, in a secured communications center, Olivia Winters, colony head of security, monitored the feeds from these devices. Her workspace was illuminated only by the glow of multiple screens, showing various angles of Noah and Lyra walking through the agricultural dome. Send the latest compilation to Earth Command immediately, she instructed her assistant. The encryption must be level 7, but that's reserved for imminent threat scenarios. Her assistant protested. Exactly, Olivia replied. Her screen showed a close-up of Ember, his form shimmering slightly as if the recording device had difficulty capturing his true appearance. Command needs to see what happens to the creature when they leave the colony. Boundaries on another monitor and encrypted communication from Earth flashed. Its response was brief and chilling. Maintain surveillance. Prepare. Contingency measures. Sylvanie Council assessment phase entering critical stage. Olivia closed the message and pulled up Noah Harrison's personnel file, scanning it for any indication he might be more than the naive botanist he appeared to be finding. Nothing suspicious. She closed the file with a frustrated gesture. If he only knew what he was dealing with, she murmured to herself. The fate of everyone in this colony might depend on his friendship with that alien. Meanwhile, in Noah's quarters, he sat across from Lyra, sharing stories of Earth. She listened with rapt attention as he described oceans and mountains she had only seen in data files. Ember had grown again, now the size of a large cat when they were in private spaces. Are there others like you and Ember? Noah asked, finally voicing the question that had been growing in his mind. The way you communicate seems more than just owner, and Pet Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Every Sylvani has a companion, she finally said. They join with us in childhood and remain through our lives. They are not pets, but nor are they separate beings exactly. She stroked Ember's scaled head. Your language lacks the concepts to explain the bond. Noah wanted to ask more, but the colony alarm system suddenly blared to life. The automated system announced a security alert at the outer perimeter. All colonists were ordered to report to designated safety zones. Something flashed in Lyra's eyes. Fear, concern. Noah couldn't be sure. Ember made a low hissing sound, his wings extending slightly. We should go, Lyra said, rising quickly. But when Noah moved toward the main gathering area, she caught his arm. This way, she said, leading him toward a service corridor. Noah hesitated. Why not the main shelter? Trust me, Lyra, said. Her voice held an urgency he had never heard before. Whatever has breached the perimeter, you do not want to be in a large group. As alarms continued to sound throughout the colony, Noah made a decision that would change everything he followed. Lyra away from safety toward whatever threat had come to New Horizon. Noah followed Lyra through narrow maintenance tunnels beneath the colony. His heart pounded with each wailing pulse of the alarm system. Ember had moved ahead of them, his body now impossibly larger than before. The dragon creature seemed to glow, faintly in the dim emergency lighting, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. Where are we going? Noah asked as they descended deeper into the colony. Infrastructure. The attack is not random, Lyra replied, her voice tense. We must reach the communications hub. Attack. Noah stumbled to a halt. What attack? Who would attack a research colony? Lyra turned to face him, her silvery eyes reflecting the emergency lights. They call themselves the Draknir Imperium. They consume worlds, Noah. They leave nothing behind. Before Noah could process this information, a violent explosion rocked the tunnel above them. The ceiling buckled metal, groaning under immense pressure. Debris began raining down. Noah froze, watching a massive support beam break free and fall directly toward him. In an instant, Ember launched from his position ahead of them. The dragon grew impossibly before Noah's eyes, expanding to the size of a small horse. His wings unfurled, spanning the entire width of the tunnel. With astonishing strength, Ember caught the falling beam and held it long enough for Lyra to pull Noah to safety. What Noah gasped, staring at Ember, now shrinking back to a more manageable size, though still much larger than the cat-sized creature from Noah's quarters. We must keep moving, Lyra urged. There is much you do not understand. They emerged into a lower level of the colony near the auxiliary power station. The sounds of chaos echoed from above. Distant weapons fire and shouted orders filtered down. Emergency systems announced. Breaches in the outer dome. Lyra moved with certainty to a hidden panel in the wall. Her fingers danced over symbols Noah had never seen. The wall slid open, revealing a room filled with technology, far more advanced than anything in the official colony. Noah realized with shock that this was Sylvani tech hidden within the human settlement. My people are not mere cultural ambassadors, Noah, Lyra said as she activated a series of controls. The view screen on the wall flickered to life, showing the colony. From above, multiple breaches were visible along with strange organic-looking ships attached to the dome like parasites. They are calling for help, but your colony communications have been severed. Who are you really? Noah demanded. Lyra straightened, her posture changing subtly. The diplomatic mask she had worn for months fell away, revealing someone far more commanding. I am Lyra, third sentinel of the Sylvani High Council, she said. My mission here was assessment and observation, assessment of what humanity. She met his eyes without flinching. The Draknir Imperium has been consuming worlds along the spiral arm for centuries. My people stand against them, but we are too few. We need allies in this war. We need to know which species are worth saving. Noah's mind raced as the implications sank in. Worth saving. You came to judge us, yes. The Sylvani Council required evidence that humans could be trusted with the knowledge and technology needed to fight the Draknir. Lyra touched a control panel and images appeared on the screen showing strange crystalline cities inhabited by beings similar to her. Your species is young, impulsive, often cruel to your own kind. We needed to know if you could overcome your fear of difference. Ember moved to her side now, the size of a pony, his scaled body humming with energy. Noah remembered every interaction with Lyra, every colonist who had avoided her, every warning from administration. How much had been a test? The explosion above them grew louder. The floor trembled. We must contact my homeworld for evacuation, Lyra said, turning back to the controls. The test is no longer relevant. The Draknir arrived sooner than anticipated. Noah watched as she attempted to establish a connection. The screen flickered, showing static, then gradually resolved into the image of a grand chamber. Tall, elegant Sylvani sat in a semicircle, their own dragon companions of various sizes beside them. Lyra spoke rapidly in her native language, the musical tones urgent. The lead Sylvani responded, their voice deep and resonant. The translation appeared as text across the bottom of the screen. The assessment is not complete. Sentinel evacuation. Resources cannot be justified without council consensus, Lyra argued passionately, gesturing toward Noah. Occasionally, Noah watched in growing horror as he realized they were debating whether the colony deserved rescue. A new voice spoke from the doorway. That's why they never sent humans to their world. Noah turned to see Grace Fleming, his childhood friend and colony communications specialist, standing with a security data pad in her hand. Her expression was hard with betrayal. Grace. How did you? I found the classified files, Noah. She stepped into the room, keeping a wary distance from Ember security, has been monitoring them since they arrived. The real reason the Sylvani are here is to decide whether humanity is worth saving or sacrificing as a buffer between them and these Draknir. They need our solar system as a defensive position, but they don't necessarily need us. Noah looked back at Lyra, who had paused in her communication. Is this true? The chamber is still connected, Noah. She gestured to the screen where the Sylvani Council watched silently. They hear every word. They see everything. Noah suddenly understood the surveillance devices throughout the colony had been reporting back to the Sylvani homeworld. The entire alien civilization had been watching. Judging. They've been broadcasting you. Noah, Grace said, her voice tight with anger. You specifically. Your interactions have been transmitted across their entire civilization. You're the test case for humanity. Another explosion rocked the facility closer this time. The lights flickered. Emergency systems announced critical failures throughout the dome. The Draknir have reached the central hub, Lyra said, her voice grim. If the council will not send evacuation, then we must fight. She turned to Noah. I was sent to observe, but I have grown to care for your people. For you, I did not. Lie about that. Grace laughed bitterly. They made you their test subject, Noah. A lab rat to see if humans could accept difference. Noah looked between Grace and Lyra, feeling the weight of betrayal. But beneath that, something else stirred. The knowledge that an entire alien civilization had been watching him, showing kindness to someone everyone else feared. What did that say about humanity? What did it say about him? Ember growled low and threatening. Suddenly alert, The wall behind them began to glow red hot. "They found us," Lyra whispered. She straightened her posture and faced the wall. Ember moved to stand beside her, growing larger, his wings unfurling to their full, impressive span. The metal began to melt. Inward. Noah looked at the screen, where the Sylvani Council watched impassively. Then he made his choice, stepping forward to stand beside Lyra and Ember. "If your people won't help us, then we help ourselves," he said loud enough for the council to hear. "We're more than your test subjects. We're worth saving, and ill prove it." The wall burst inward and chaos erupted. The creatures that burst through the wall were nothing like Noah had imagined. Their bodies were armored with chitinous plates glinting metallic in the emergency lights. Multiple limbs ended in what appeared to be both weapons and tools. Their eyeless heads featured sensory pits that pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence. Ember roared a sound that shook the very walls. The dragon, now massive and terrifying, lunged forward. Flames erupted from his jaws, engulfing the first wave of Draknir attackers. Their exoskeletons blackened and cracked under the intense heat, but more pushed through behind them. "Get back," Lyra shouted, pushing Noah and Grace toward the rear exit. Her hands began to glow with swirling energy patterns weaving between her fingers. She thrust her palms forward and a blast of force slammed into the Draknir, sending them crashing against the far wall. Noah stared in amazement. "You never showed any of these abilities." "No time to explain." Lyra gestured urgently. "The colony defense. Forces need to know what they're fighting. We must reach the command center." Grace hesitated, clearly torn between her distrust of Lyra and the immediate threat. "I know a back route," she finally said. "Follow me." They fled through maintenance corridors. While Ember held the Draknir at bay, the dragon would periodically shrink to navigate narrow passages, then expand again when space allowed. Through the colony emergency system, they could hear desperate reports of multiple breaches. Each report ended in static and screams. The command center was in chaos when they arrived. The thick reinforced doors showed scorch marks from weapons fire. Inside personnel rushed between stations trying to coordinate what remained of the colony's defenses administrator. Valerie Holt stood at the central command table, her face ashen as she processed incoming reports. Noah burst in with Lyra, Grace, and a temporarily miniaturized Ember close behind Valerie, looked up, her expression shifting from relief to anger at the sight of Lyra. "What is she doing here?" she demanded. The alien wrath has finally shown its true face. "No, Lyra has been trying to help us." Noah interrupted. "We need her." Ruby Chen, the militia commander, stepped forward, her tactical gear splattered with something that resembled black oil. "They came through the North Agricultural Dome first," she reported. "They have some kind of organic technology that burrows through our barriers. The standard weapons barely slow them down." Lyra moved to the tactical, display her expression grim. "The Draknir consume all they encounter," she explained. "Their ships are partly grown, partly built amalgamations of technologies stolen from 100 conquered species. They seek not just territory but biomass." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Valerie finally spoke. "How do we stop them?" "We fight together," Lyra replied. She gestured to the screen where the Sylvani Council still observed. The transmission had never been cut. "We have weapons that can harm them, but my people require proof that humanity deserves our full alliance." "So we're still being tested," Noah said bitterly. "Even as we're being slaughtered." Ruby checked her weapon. "Your people brought this war to our doorstep," she accused Lyra. "If you have weapons that can help, use them now or get out of our way." Ember growled softly, growing just large enough to make everyone in the room tense. Lyra placed a calming hand on his scaled neck. "I was sent to observe, but I have the authority to act." She said, "I will help you fight, but know that my actions may not sway the council. You must show them yourselves why humanity deserves to be saved." Ruby distributed weapons to everyone capable of fighting. Noah found himself holding an unfamiliar pulse rifle. The weight of it felt wrong in hands more accustomed to tending plants. "The Draknir are moving toward the central power core," Ruby announced, checking the tactical display. "If they disable it, the environmental systems fail. We have minutes, not hours. Noah looked at Grace, her face set with determination. Despite everything, she nodded at him, a silent acknowledgement of their shared past, their friendship, the knowledge that whatever happened, they would face it as humans together. The command center shook as something massive struck the upper levels. Ceiling panels crashed down around them. Through the newly formed gaps, Noah could see the sky darkened by enormous ships that seemed to writhe and pulse like living things. Lyra accessed the colony communication system and spoke rapidly in her native language. The screen showing the council flickered, then stabilized. A new figure appeared, larger and more elaborately dressed than the others. The Grand Sentinel acknowledges your request for intervention, Third Sentinel. The translation read, "The Concordat deliberates." Valerie stared at the screen. "Those are your leaders watching us die and deliberating?" she asked incredulously. "Yes," Lyra admitted. "The politics of my people are complex. This war has raged for centuries. We do not commit our forces without certainty of what Noah demanded, that our allies will not become our enemies." Lyra met his eyes, "that the worlds we defend are worthy of the cost." Ruby checked her tactical display and cursed, "They're breaching the command level," she warned everyone in defensive positions. Ember grew rapidly, expanding to fill nearly half the room. His scales hardened, taking on a metallic sheen. Noah realized with shock that the dragons were living weapons, yet Ember had never harmed any colonist despite the fear and suspicion. Noah made a decision that would change everything. He stepped up to the transmission display and addressed the Sylvani Council directly. "You want to know if humans deserve saving?" he said, looking into the alien eyes that had been judging him for months. "Look at how we fight, not just for ourselves, but for each other. Look at how we face extinction with courage. If that isn't enough, then nothing will be." He turned away, not waiting for a response, and joined Ruby at the barricade. The first sounds of the Draknir could be heard outside the reinforced doors, scraping, clicking sounds that raised the hair on Noah's neck. Lyra moved to stand beside him, her hands again glowing with energy. Ember positioned himself at the front, ready to meet the attack. Grace worked frantically at the communications console, trying to warn the remaining outposts when the doors began to glow, red hot. The metal bubbled and warped as some kind of acid ate through the reinforcement. "This is it," Ruby said grimly. "Aim for the sensory organs on their heads. They seem most vulnerable there." Noah looked at Lyra beside him. Her alien features no longer seemed strange to him, just another face of a friend willing to fight and possibly die to protect others. What better proof of worthiness could there be? The doors collapsed inward, and the battle for New Horizon entered its final phase. The Draknir poured through the broken doorway, their chitinous bodies clicking against the metal floor. Ember met them with a wall of flame, while Lyra channeled energy that crackled through the air like lightning. The colonists opened fire, with their weapons creating a deafening cacophony of sound. Noah had never fired a weapon before. His first shots went wide, but he quickly learned to aim for the pulsing sensory organs Ruby had identified. Each time a Draknir fell, two more seemed to take its place. Their strange screeching calls echoed through the command center. Valerie coordinated the remaining colonists, establishing a defensive perimeter around the central systems. Grace worked desperately to maintain communication with the outer habitats, warning them of the approaching danger. Noah fought alongside Lyra, their movements becoming synchronized as they defended each other. She guided his aim with subtle gestures, teaching him even amid the chaos. Ember protected them both. His massive form a shield against the Draknir weapons, a particularly large Draknir broke through the defensive line, headed straight for the power controls. Ruby emptied her weapon into it, slowing but not stopping the creature. Noah saw the danger and rushed forward, placing himself between the alien and the critical systems. The Draknir raised a limb that ended in a viciously barbed appendage. Noah braced himself for pain, but Lyra was suddenly there, pushing him aside. The barb pierced her shoulder, purple blood spattering across the console. "No," Noah cried, catching her as she stumbled. Ember roared with fury and launched himself at the Draknir. His jaws closed around the creature's head, crushing it. The dragon's eyes glowed with an intensity Noah had never seen before, as if Lyra's pain had triggered something primal within the bond they shared. Noah lowered Lyra to the floor, her blood seeping between his fingers. "Why would you do that?" he asked, pressing his hand against her wound to slow the bleeding. Lyra looked up at him with pain-filled eyes. "Because you showed me what humanity truly is," she whispered. "Not the fear, not the suspicion, but the capacity for kindness, for acceptance, for growth. You alone treated me as a person from the beginning." The battle raged around them, Ruby shouting orders, colonists firing weapons, Ember growing impossibly larger, his wings spanning the entire width of the command center. The transmission to the Sylvani Council remained active, the alien leaders watching. "Everything, Noah, we need to fall back to the secondary position." Ruby called. "The inner doors won't hold much longer." Noah helped Lyra to her feet, supporting her weight. Her normally vibrant skin had paled to a soft lavender. Ember returned to her side, shrinking slightly to move through the narrower corridors. The dragon seemed to share her pain, his movements less fluid than before, as they retreated deeper into the colony. Noah realized they were running out of places to go. The Draknir had systematically cut off each escape route. The remaining colonists gathered in the central hub, a reinforced chamber designed as the last defense. Valerie sealed the doors behind them and turned to Lyra. "Your people have abandoned us," she said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "Where is your council now?" Lyra leaned heavily against a console. "We are not abandoned yet," she said. "The council must reach consensus. It is our way." A deep rumbling shook the colony, stronger than any previous attack. The walls vibrated with such force that equipment fell from shelves and crashed to the floor. "This is it," Ruby said, her weapon trained on the sealed doors. "This is where we make our stand." Noah looked around at the faces of his fellow colonists. Some he had known for years, others barely at all. Yet in this moment they stood united, facing extinction with dignity and courage. This was humanity at its core, finding strength in unity, despite their differences. A new sound cut through the rumbling, a high-pitched whine that made everyone cover their ears. The transmission screen flickered and the image of the Sylvani Council disappeared, replaced by a tactical display showing the space above New Horizon. Massive ships had appeared in orbit, their design clearly Sylvani, with sweeping crystalline structures and organic curves. Unlike the writhing Draknir vessels, these moved with precision and purpose. "The Concordat has reached consensus," the Grand Sentinel announced through the colony communication system. The Sylvani stand with humanity. Beams of intense light shot from the Sylvani vessels, cutting through the Draknir ships. The smaller alien craft began to retreat, only to be pursued by fighters that reminded Noah of larger versions of Ember inside the colony. The attack on the doors suddenly stopped. The sensors showed the Draknir forces withdrawing, pulled back to defend their motherships. "They came," Lyra whispered, a smile spreading across her face. They actually came. The colonists watched in awe as the battle moved from the ground to the skies. A cheer went up as the first Draknir mothership exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Outside the sealed doors, a new sound emerged, not the clicking of Draknir, but the melodic tones of Sylvani voices. Team of Sylvani warriors, each accompanied by combat-sized dragons, broke through the wreckage to reach the survivors. In the aftermath, Noah sat beside Lyra's medical pod, while Sylvani healers worked to repair her wound. Ember curled protectively at her feet, his size now that of a large dog. The dragon watched the proceedings with intelligent eyes, occasionally making soft chirping sounds that seemed to comfort Lyra. "You saved us all," Noah said, taking her hand. "My kindness may have started this, but your courage finished it." Lyra squeezed his fingers. "You gave my people something they had forgotten. The Grand Sentinel told me that watching all humans fight to protect each other, reminded them of what we once were before centuries of war made us cold and calculating." The door slid open and a tall, elegant Sylvani entered. Her dragon companion, larger and more ornate than Ember, followed close behind. Lyra attempted to sit up and respect Grand Sentinel, she acknowledged. Rest third. Sentinel, the leader said. Her eyes turned to Noah. Harrison, we owe you a debt. Noah shook his head, confused. I just treated Lyra like a person. Anyone would have, no. The Grand Sentinel replied. They would not. That is precisely why you are remarkable. Your kindness, when all others showed fear, has changed the course of our civilization. Behind her, more Sylvani entered the room, including members of the council Noah recognized from the transmission. They studied him with curious eyes. Billions of my people watched as you alone approached someone different. Someone feared Noah Harrison. The Grand Sentinel continued. That simple act began a change in hearts that no diplomatic negotiation could have achieved. Today, the Concordat voted unanimously not just to defend this colony, but to offer humanity full alliance. Status Noah looked at Lyra in amazement. She smiled back, her color returning as the healers worked. Sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with the smallest acts of kindness. She said, the entire planet was watching and you showed them the best of humanity. As Noah sat surrounded by humans and Sylvani alike, he realized that the bridge between their species had begun with one simple choice to sit across from someone different and say hello.